On yesterday's show, we talked about Marjorie Taylor Greene posting a photo, and in it she said, I am, honoring the Confederate soldiers of the Wilder Brigade. And I went on a little bit of a rant because it upset me. And I'm not releasing that as its own clip because we're going to do an updated version of the story today that makes it even more wild and hilarious. But I'm going to use this as an opportunity and then wait because this is just bonkers, and then we're going to look at some interview moments from her as well. But this is a chance for me to plug. You should go to patreon.com if you're watching this on YouTube or listening to the podcast. But this applies to the YouTube viewers. Patreon.com/Luke Beasley. And whatever it is, $5, $10 a month, whatever you can give. And then you'll get access to the full video version of the show. So for example, you're watching this and you won't see that first version of this story that I did about Marjorie Taylor Greene where I got pretty upset because that's only accessible to everyone who gets the full show daily. And since I'm doing an updated version, I'm not going to upload two clips that are very similar in the story they tell, but different in kind of the content of them. So patreon.com/Luke Beasley to get the full show and support what I do. Now, this is what she posted. Tonight, I stopped at the Wilder Monument in Georgia, which honors the Confederate soldiers of the Wilder Brigade. I will always defend our nation's history. Ends her with a few photos. Well, why did this get even more bonkers? She sent out an updated version saying the same thing, which honors, but instead of saying the Confederate soldiers, it says the soldiers. I will always defend our nation's history. Why did she edit that? It's because she found out that this monument is to Union soldiers. So not only was she trying to celebrate Confederate soldiers, she was wrong about what the monument stood for. It was for Union soldiers. What a dummy. But what got me so mad about this? I will always defend our nation's history is how she ends that. And it's a talking point we hear so often about why we shouldn't be taking down statues to Confederate generals or Confederate soldiers or whatever. And it's so enraging to me that anyone would want to see the representative go, in this scenario, wrongfully, didn't even know what monument she was at, go, I love Confederate soldiers, let's honor them, hoorah. When what those soldiers were fighting on behalf of, what you're honoring is them trying to protect their own ability to own other people. Now, I hear so often from people whenever you talk about the Civil War, oh, you clearly don't understand the Civil War because it was economic and it was states' rights and it was blah, blah, blah. Shut up for a second, okay? I don't know who I'm talking to. You probably don't watch my show if this is addressed to you, but no. While you're correct that they were citing states' rights and they were citing our economy is dependent on, at the end of the day, what are you trying to protect? What is the right you're trying to protect with your states' rights? You're trying to protect the right to own people and brutalize them and treat them like animals. What is the economic factor? You're trying to keep your economy dependent on owning people. So this isn't to make some, claim about if the North's economy was dependent on that maybe they wanted blah, blah, blah. Doesn't matter. Here's what I'm saying. You can get into that if you're talking about history and you're interested, fine. But what we're talking about here is someone in the modern day to go to a monument and think that it's for Confederate soldiers and go, haha, I'm going to post this because I just love Confederate soldiers and want to honor them, is to say you're honoring, word she used, the fight to keep slavery. And what I talked about on yesterday's show is you wouldn't go in Germany and see statues of Hitler. That doesn't mean that you're erasing the history of Germany, right? Because what she says, I'll always defend our nation's history. And you hear that a lot. Oh, wiping down statues means that you're erasing our history. No, it means we're not celebrating certain parts of it. It's not that difficult to understand. You can learn history without celebrating what happened. So I think our textbooks absolutely should teach about the Civil War and should teach about the Confederacy. I don't think we should have to walk by monuments that celebrate those individuals. Good thing this monument wasn't to those individuals. Oh, so aggravating. Okay, not that hard to understand, but they pretend to be ignorant so that they can dog whistle the stink out of all these things. Here's a few moments from an interview she did with Charlie Kirk. First, talking about Brian Kemp.
Grateful to Governor Kemp because he did keep our state open, Charlie, and that can't be said enough. It was so important for us here in Georgia, especially me being a business owner and knowing so many
I don't know.
people.
I'm not a Kemp guy. Kemp pissed me off. Excuse my language. He's not a good person, but he's better than Stacey Abrams. But I appreciate the sentiment. I do think you should vote for Kemp, but he's not a good person.
So that's interesting. At the end of the day, even though they pretend like Kemp was the worst thing ever because he didn't fully go on, wasn't fully on board with Trump's attempt to overturn the 2020 election, they're sucking it up, which you would expect, but still an interesting dynamic. Next, she addresses the woke universities.
We have to do a better job with our policies, Charlie, so that young people after high school enter into job training and they get jobs instead of going to woke universities where their mind and souls get completely ruined. And so that's where my heart is at, Charlie. You know, my kids are age 19, 23, and 24. And it's that generation that I really care about. And they're being robbed of opportunities. We have to do a better job.
Yeah, you understand, if you're going to cultivate the right-wing movement that Marjorie Taylor Greene wants to cultivate, you gotta go after education first, because what you do in college largely allows you to kind of learn more critical thinking skills and be a little bit more independently minded from your parents and from your community. And you can't have that if you're going to keep people believing such wild things. Next, she calls out anti-white racism.
And this is the sentiment that's coming from Democrats that is so very wrong, is this anti-white racism. You know, being American, we're all equal. And we need to put aside all of this identity, political identity politics and racist name calling. We just need to all decide that we're all equal and stick with it. But that's not who the Democrats are.
It's as easy as that, guys. Let's just decide. Okay, this is actually an important point, though. First of all, the anti-white racism. If there's some people making dumb jokes or serious claims, you know, even worse, that are like, oh, I hate white people and blah, blah, blah. That's dumb. Idiots. Ignore that, okay? And if you're experiencing some sort of prejudice in your life and you believe it's because of your race being white, then let's have that conversation. But we understand broadly that's still not the reality in America, and them pretending like it is pretty wild. But more importantly, at the end there, she says, why can't we all just believe that we're equal? Or let's just all see that we're equal. Okay, I agree with you. That would be wonderful. But actually what you're doing in trying to do the whole we're all colorblind thing is standing in the way of us actually being equal. Because what do you have to do whenever you're in a not equal society and people are hindered more and hurt more in certain ways based on their race? First, you got to solve those problems. Once you solve those problems, you could actually develop a society where you're not having to worry about that in your economic opportunities, whatever it is. But to fix the problem, you have to speak of the problem. You have to be aware of the problem. And so, of course, race is going to have to come up whenever it's still a very real thing in the way that people's lives are treated, in the way that they go, and the opportunities that they have. And so by trying to say, let's just ignore that whole thing, we're all equal, come on. Now, I wish that was the case, but it's not yet. And as long as it's not, we do actually have to speak about these issues and recognize race is a very real phenomenon and fact in the lives of people and the way that affects their life. So incoherent from Marjorie Taylor Greene as always, and just an incredible moment. She is trying to celebrate these Confederate soldiers while getting it wrong, and is actually celebrating Union soldiers, which I would support, and misunderstanding what it means to learn history versus celebrate history, and then a normal, bizarre interview. Crazy stuff.